greetings and welcome to everybody who's joining us. We're here from Future Generations University, and we want to start by saying thank you for coming to the first episode of the second season of Amplify Your Impact, which is a webinar series designed to highlight digital skills and accessible tools that can help you share your message with your community. The Future Generations University mission is to advance research, learning, and action through inclusive and sustainable community change worldwide. We do that through education, through action research, and peer learning, and that's what we're doing here today. So we're pleased to welcome you, and when you join us, please make sure you share your name and where you're logging in from in the chat so we can feel connected to you as we move forward in the program. There are a couple of housekeeping reminders. Just to set some expectations, our agenda today, we're going to start with some brief introductions of the three members of the communications team at the university who are on the panel discussing email communication and email campaigns today. Afterwards, we're going to, the three of us are going to go through a couple different segments about email campaigns. And we're going to start from like the 30,000 foot view, and then we're going to end with some practical ways to create a campaign using Canva. And Canva is a digital tool that is accessible for free that was discussed in the first season of Amplify. So at the conclusion of this presentation, this is a 1 hour long webinar. And so we will have time at the end for an open forum to discuss and ask questions and answer questions and talk about other tips and resources that you may have to share. And then following that, you will be sent the recording of this presentation, the slide deck, and we'll also include some pertinent links to sessions from the past. And we will get you prepared for next week's session. So throughout the presentation, please use the chat to enter commentary, tips, suggestions, and the Q&A button is at the bottom center of your screen. And that's a great forum to add any questions that we'll get to toward the end of the presentation. And with that, I'm pleased to ask my colleagues to introduce yourselves, and we'll go in reverse order of the presentation order for today. So Chris, let me start with you. If you will, please introduce yourself, and then we'll go to Lindsay, and then I will go and start the presentation.
Sure. For the sake of brevity, I'm going to be brief. My name is Chris Reiser. I'm the alumni coordinator. I've been with Future Generations University for over 4 years, and I work primarily with the alumni and, of course, with communications. And I'm happy to be here because I know that this is something that our alumni have expressed interest in. And so I see this as a way to make sure that we are allowing people to grow their skills. So thank you for being here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lindsay Kazarek. I am the Recruitment and Communications Associate here at Future Generations University. I work very cross-functionally here at the university. I work on our community engagement team, our communications team, and our academics team, recruiting hopefully more students to join our wonderful master's program. I'm also a master's student in my very last semester with many of you that are here on this call today. So I'm very grateful to be here with all of you, and I hope to see everyone throughout the rest of this series. So thanks for being here.
Thanks, ladies. And my name is Deborah Soswer. I'm the Senior Director of Strategic Communications at the university. My background is actually in fine art, and then I pivoted to getting involved in arts nonprofits. And I have a deep love of higher education. I'm the daughter of professors, and so it's been a wonderful joy to come to Future Generations and apply the creativity and the love of education on kind of a global scale with our students, alumni, and the communities that we serve. So I'm very pleased to be presenting with my colleagues today and to welcome you to the presentation. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with a brief overview of what email even is. Email stands for electronic mail. The first email was sent in 1971. So it's only been a little more than 50 years that email has existed. Um, and it was an engineer named Ray Tomlinson. And so the first email will look nothing like what we see in our inboxes today. It was honestly a set of string of numbers and letters. So it was code. But it was the first time that that was sent to another person and using the @ symbol for the address. So then 7 years later, a marketing manager named Gary Thurk was the person who used this as a direct communication method. So within a pretty short time span, this aligns with a lot of digital technologies where in the past, industrial technologies usually took 1, 2, or 3 generations before that piece of technology became obsolete. For once the digital age was born, it really takes just a few years for obsolescence to happen. So number, strings, and letters became an actual letter that was sent, and the first email was sent to 400 people, and it resulted in about $13 million in sales, and that was in 1978. So that is I don't know what to do, how to do the calculation and inflation between then and now, but a pretty astronomical return. And so, of course, by the 90s, email became more ubiquitous to the broad public. And today, it's hard to find anyone who doesn't use email in one shape or another, whether professionally or personally. So, what is the difference between sending an email and creating an email campaign or a marketing campaign? So, when you send emails, typically they are singular messages that are sent to a single person or to a small group of people. They tend to be personal or transactional, right? I have an email thread with family members so that we can help plan a family reunion, right? Or I will send, plenty of work emails to colleagues, to vendors, and receive emails in those terms. An email marketing campaign is a strategic initiative that usually involves multiple pre-scheduled emails that all combine for a singular goal. So you coordinate the type of communication you have with people, you identify the audience, and then you target an action that you want the audience to take. And the reason that this is so effective is because when you are building new relationships and when you're representing a company, whether that's a for-profit or nonprofit, it takes multiple what's called touches for people to respond to your messaging or respond to your branding. So for profit sales, like if you had a business where you were selling a product, the average number of touches before someone will buy is 7. For nonprofits, for donations, that number is 13. So that means that on average, people will have to get 13 messages from you before they're convinced that they're going to want to donate to you. So the benefits of using an email marketing campaign is that you can map out and plan and goal set, and then you can actually measure the results. So when you're sending an individual email from your inbox, you can't always tell when it's been opened, if it's even been read, if it's been lost in a spam filter. If you don't hear back from that person, there's a myriad of number of reasons why. But when you use an email platform and you create an email marketing campaign, you can actually track if the email gets opened, how long the person has the email open in their browser. You can see exactly what links that they clicked. And the more sophisticated measurement tools you want become available. Usually you start to pay a little bit more for the email service. but you can see a lot of information even with free versions of a lot of email services. Another benefit of email campaigns is that it is direct communication. When you pay for an advertisement in a newspaper or a billboard or a digital ad on a social media platform, you can see the number of impressions that you get. You can track the efficacy of those, but it's kind of out in the world, and people have to happen to be available to see those kind of messages. But when you use an email, it is going directly to that person at a place that most people tend to check quite regularly. And email is quite accessible. So if you are able to have an internet connection, there are free services to have email, and there are a number of email platforms that do have free opportunities to use them. So it's pretty accessible. So it's one of the lowest costs and highest returns for marketing and for communications. Now, there can be some downsides to email campaign marketing. People certainly can get email fatigue. So it isn't a slow cooker. It's not this email campaign worked really well, and so I'm just going to set it and forget it. As people's lives change, as the world changes, as your own organization change, or the things that you're doing, you're going to want to make sure that the email communications that you have with your audience also shifts and evolves so that it doesn't seem like an automaton. So it's something that takes ongoing reflection and work to do well. A lot of people pointed this out in the chat. They're looking for emails that look like they could be spam, but actually your own email, that the organizations that provide email addresses, they have sophisticated spam filters. So you probably all have noticed that you have an actual spam folder. So you can see your inbox, you can see your sent mail, and then there's a mailbox that says spam. And that catches a lot of email communications there are algorithms that measure, kind of who is the sender, what is the subject line, does it seem, appropriate or not, and then it gets, swept into the spam filters. So an email marketing campaign, because it comes from it is the IP address, and the originating email comes from a system and not an individual email address. It's higher likelihood that will get caught in a spam filter that's automatic to your email. And a bonus of email campaigns is that they're quite affordable, but there can be a cost associated with them, especially the more sophisticated measurements that you might be looking for. You can also see, depending on the number in your audience. So that a lot of platforms will offer like a free service, but it limits the number of addresses that you can include, or it limits the number of emails you can send. Now, the more people in your address book, the more emails you want to send, the more cost becomes associated with that. So some of the kind of campaigns that you might think about using includes a welcome email. Now, some of these are things that I know are good communications practice, and I still need to keep improving that for the university. So one of my spring projects is I realized I don't really have a great welcome email when people sign up to get our newsletter or sign up to get more information from us. So that is going to get remedied very quickly. I'll be happy to share that with everybody at a future Amplify session so that you can see that we're not only talking the talk, but we'll walk the walk right with you. But it's really nice, and I'm sure you guys can relate to this when you're interested, you meet someone and they say, oh, you want to follow their organization, or you're interested in getting information, and then you get a nice personalized email and it shows you exactly different things to engage your interest immediately once you sign up. So welcome emails are a really good use for email campaigns. What we use a lot of email for is impact storytelling and relationship building. So, and later on in this presentation, you're going to see some of the different considerations based on audience. But for the university, we're trying to both inspire and share the uplifting work of our students, alumni, faculty, and communities and community engagement programming. And we're also trying to make sure that people know that we're top of mind, and so that it is an ongoing relationship. So we're trying to meet people where they are and help them see how they can stay involved with the university. We also use email campaigns for recruitment and for brand loyalty. So um, I'll talk about that, about a drip campaign. Email is an extremely effective tool for fundraising and appeals for nonprofits, because again, it reaches people where they are. And so part of my work in the spring or at the end of the year and at the end of the year is to create a communications plan for our spring appeal and for our year-end donation appeals. And so a huge part of that is the email campaign communications. And then that is tied to our social media, and it's tied to physical mail, and it's tied to texts and phone calls. And so it's one piece of a large whole for strategic communications. Now, a drip campaign, that is one of the things that the university uses. And you might notice this if you have ever made an online purchase, or you thought about buying something online from an online vendor, you've put it in your cart, then you decide, actually, I'm not going to get that right now. What you might see is an email in your inbox later that day or the next day, which says, are you forgetting something? Did you miss something? And then a couple days later, it might say, we noticed that you left this in your cart. And then maybe that was enough of an incentive for you to say, oh, actually, you know what? I do want to get this item. And then perhaps 2 weeks later, you get a survey. How did you like the item? Did it come in the mail? And then a couple weeks later, because you got this item, you might like to buy these other 3 things. So that's all part of an automated drip campaign. So that is where you create parameters by which people receive emails. So if someone makes a purchase, then you would have a drip campaign that has these, number of emails following up on that purchase, because once someone buys something once, they're more likely to buy again. And the same is true for donations for nonprofits. The hardest part is to capture the first time donor. Once they have made a donation to you, the likelihood that they'll donate again is exponentially larger than anyone donating for the first time. And the way the university has it, we have a drip campaign for people who are interested in our master's degree program. So if they've signed up to learn more specifically about the master's degree, maybe they haven't taken the step to make a Calendly invitation to talk to Lindsay or to talk to someone else on our academic team. So we have a number of emails that that highlight the program and highlight different aspects of the program, and they are scheduled to reach that person about every 2 weeks or so. And that is a cadence that we have found seems to be effective, because after, if someone's interested in the degree, but everyone who comes to us is busy. That's a prerequisite to wanting to be a community development professional, I think. So, 2 weeks later, they get a reminder, and there might be some aspect of the program that really aligns with what they're interested in. And that will be the message that gets them to say, okay, I'm going to call Lindsay up. Okay, I'm going to sign up. I'm going to try to register. Or maybe it'll be 4 weeks, or maybe it'll be 6 weeks after that initial interest. So that's how we use drip campaigns. When you're able to measure the click rates, or the people who used to be very engaged, but maybe they haven't been engaged anymore, you can create a campaign for re-engagement emails. So you can actually use your email platform to identify email addresses of people who maybe you can put the parameters in yourself, but you can say maybe they originally had a certain percentage of the click rate. They clicked one link on every email for the first 6 months that they got emails from you. And then that's tapered off. So you might just put into your program, I want to see everyone who has stopped clicking on a link in the last 6 months. And then you can create a special email just for that kind of segment of your audience and say, we've noticed you haven't engaged with us. We want to hear from you. You can also schedule things like if you're able to enter in birthdays or major milestones, either for your organization or for your audience members. You can automate, birthday messages or anniversary. It's been 1 year since you've become a member of my organization. So those are some of the automated email campaigns you can do. And so your loyalty program is the same. It's not the same thing. It is a lot of your email campaigns can be a space for really exclusive content, and that can create value to your audience members. So if your audience, something that really helps with loyalty and with a sense of pride and is feeling like people have a stake in your business, people have a stake in your organization, people feel like they are intimately involved with you. And so a loyalty program email campaign can help them say, like, that's where you can kind of lift the veil and bring people in a way that's a little bit more personalized or a little bit more special than your normal public facing communications. And that can just help people feel really tied to you and help support you. So now I'm going to turn it over to Lindsay, who's going to tell us about what content is appropriate for what audience.
Okay. So this is a big part of my job here at the university is helping to figure out what content should be filtered to the rightful audience. And here at the university, we have a pretty large audience because of us being a global university. So Deborah, can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So the general university audience, it's really important for us to focus on our mission and our broad institutional storytelling, what our goals are as far as visibility for the university. We are always making sure that more students are trying to see us, that donors and partners are seeing us, and that we have the support from those donors and partners that we need to move forward. But as we move into a more funneled approach, when we are looking at our Appalachian community audience, or whenever Chris is working with our Himalayan community development programming, we are not necessarily wanting to convey that same messaging. And so it's really important that we segment. And Deborah talked a little bit about this. And what segmenting is that's whenever we take that larger audience and break it into sections. And that section can be based on behavior. It can be based on geographical region. It can be based on student versus donor, anything like that. So you can segment your audience in a varied different way, depending on what you need to do. But in this particular case today, we're going to talk about that based on geographic region and our Appalachian community, because that's what I'm most familiar with here at the university. So whenever I'm looking at splitting up that content, it might be that we are talking about the local relevance. So, right now, maple season is underway. And so we're sharing a lot of maple related content in Appalachia. We are wanting people to participate in those maple events, whether that be through our programming here at the university with our Out of the Woods webinar series, whether that be through our research that we have online, the resources that we have available, or even with trusted relationships. So like right now, we have a great opportunity for the community here in Appalachia to partner with producers, to partner with the university through Maple in the Classroom or through Forest on the Go boxes. And so the way that we talk about those types of activities is very different with that audience versus how we would communicate any of that with the general university audience. And some of those things we wouldn't communicate at all with the general university audience right now because they're just not a priority. So the goal is not necessarily to say more to either one of these audiences. The goal is really to find the most useful version of the message and the people that are going to most likely act on that message in that audience. Deborah, we can move to the next slide, please. So when we're looking at why segmentation matters, it's really looking at working smarter and not harder. People in your list do not experience your emails as a shared audience. And so what I mean by that is the message that you send to that email message that you send out to your audience is not going to be received the same way by everyone. So they're going to experience your email when you send it as a personal interruption in their day. So it's got to earn their place. And that's where we go back to some of the comments that we were getting at the very beginning. What gets you to open up that email? Who it's from? What's in the subject line, the relevance, the trust. And so that's why segmenting is really important and it helps you earn that trust. It helps you get that momentum going. And so that's why whenever you segment, you're sending a more relevant message to the right person. Next slide, please, Deborah. So when you're getting ready to send an email, these are some of the things that I think about when creating the message and whether it goes to, say, my Appalachian audience or the university audience. And so who's it really for? Is it a broad enough message for the university audience, or is it a narrow enough message for the Appalachian audience? So for example, if we have a very specific piece of research that I want to promote, say for example, the timing of tapping. I would promote that to the Appalachian audience, but to the university audience, I would promote Appalachia's general research offerings overall, as an example. Next slide. So these are some other things to consider. Earlier, I had mentioned sort of like that funnel effect. So at the top is the broader institutional funnel. So that's where the university kind of sits. And so for this presentation purpose, the university sits up there and that lives higher on the ladder. And so everybody needs to understand like our mission-led story. And then as we come down this funnel, I want you to think that we're getting more specific. And that's how we are going to funnel content to your segmented list or your very specific set of contacts that you're going to send emails to. And in my case, this is Appalachia. And so as we go down this list, we're going to think more about what are their shared interests? Are there topics, themes, events that begin to sort the audience from that bigger audience? The community context. This for me is super easy. Appalachia is the region. So that really sets us apart from the rest of that global audience. The lived experiences that they have. Maple Days, you guys hear me talk about that a lot. The local relevance of where that happens, very specifically here in West Virginia and Virginia. And then as we continue to come down that funnel, we're going to get more and more specific, and then that's going to help you filter that content to get to that specific audience and help them to open up that email. And why all of this matters is because the broader your message is, it's going to create awareness. But the more narrow you create your message, or the more specific your messaging becomes, then you're going to create a response. But whenever we're going back and to what Deborah was saying earlier about creating that actual email campaign, a strong email campaign is going to use both of those. So both broad messaging and specific messaging on purpose. You're going to go back and forth between those two. Next slide, please, Deborah. So these two audiences need different types of messaging for different reasons. And I just wanted to lay this out a little bit so that you can see why your audiences would also potentially need two different types of content. And possibly even more, depending on how big your community is. And this can also be used for social media too. So if you have a Facebook page and you have groups that you belong to, this same principle can be applied there as well. So if you want to look back at the first season of Amplify on the social media section, check that out as well. But this just kind of lists out why each audience cares about the things that they care about. And then what's important is the call to action. So Deborah talked about links as an example. And in an email, that's the best option that you have to get somebody to click on something. But how you get them to do that is it can be different each time. So whether you're using action words like explore or learn more, it doesn't have to be click here. So just think about the different ways that you can entice your community to engage with you in that email. What does that look like? And don't be afraid to look at other emails and see how other people are doing it. There's ways that you can adapt what's already out there and make it work for you. There's nothing wrong with that either. Next slide, please, Deborah. So when should you send one email versus customizing it or splitting the list? So that's something that we deal with a lot here at the university. And thankfully, I have Deborah and Chris to help me out with this. But if you are a one-person show, which, you know, I've had to do lots of times before, this is something that I've sort of used as a rule of thumb. So the more place specific and action specific messaging becomes, the more likely it is that it's going to belong in that sectioned off, or like that segmented audience. That's not going to go to that big, broad audience. Or it's not going to go to a general newsletter type of list. So keep that in mind. And that's just a good general rule of thumb to have. The more broad and relevant it is, the more likely it is that it's a good fit for a newsletter, or it's a good fit for you know, your audience at large. But if it's too broad and it's too relevant, you know, if it's not specific enough, then start to think like, is this right to send out at all? There is a little bit of a balance there. Next slide, Deborah. So I wanted to give an example here of something that we could put into into place. So we have here a subject that could potentially go out into one or both of our email lists. So a student came up with a watershed project with community partners. And we want to talk about that in um, our email newsletter. If we were to do that, would we do that in either the general university newsletter or the Appalachian newsletter? And in this case, we could actually do it in both. And how we could go about doing that for the university is that we would lead with our mission and our vision. We would talk about the student leadership, the learning. Uh, Seed scale definitely could be talked about there, the institutional purpose, talking about the innovation and the community impact. What is happening with the broader visibility for the university and community as a whole? And then determining the best call to action for that story for the university. In this case, this might be used as something in a year-end appeal. It might be used for donor support. It might be used for the university to potentially garner new partners. So depending on who that story would be shown to, our call to action might change because it's not unusual for us to repurpose content depending on the audience that it's being shared to. And then when we share this for Appalachia, our Appalachian community engagement programming is very closely partnered with natural resources programming in the state and the Department of Agriculture. And so when we share this, we want to lead with our local partners in programming, what the community need is. Right now in West Virginia, there is a water crisis in the southern coal fields. And so there's lots that we can talk about there, what has changed on the ground. From the time the student did this work versus to what's happening now with current events, emphasizing why this matters for Appalachian communities right now and how this is making an impact for the future. And so for this, our call to action might actually be joining a live event. Maybe the student is going to have another event and they need volunteers. So maybe we need to connect them with a program partner, or maybe there's going to be an info session that people in Appalachia can attend. And so there's two very different ways to present the exact same story. And I wanted to show how, in this specific case, you could do that while I have everyone here, because this is something that we do all the time, and it's very useful for us. Next slide, please. And then this is a simple breakdown, basically of how we would continue to do what we just did with like mission and stories. So for the university, we would talk about how the university develops change makers through our students. And then for the Appalachian program, I would talk about mission stories through how our work strengthens Appalachian communities. For events, for the university, university-wide updates and public milestones. One of the ways that we do this is Deborah sends out an email every single month at the start of the month talking about what we have going on university-wide programming. Then for Appalachia, I talk about what we have as far as regional gatherings, trainings, local opportunities that are just absolutely not relevant to the university-wide audience. And so that was a great example of how we do those two differently. How we talk about impact. We talk about our research, our student outcomes, and our alumni stories at the university level. But at the Appalachian community level, we're looking at our community outcomes. We are talking about our trusted local voices. So that's our partners sharing what our partners are doing. A great example is that the U Mountain Center is a partner that if you were on the Appalachian Field Course, you got to check out the U. But they recently did this great, or they're still doing this really great fundraiser. And so we try to share the ways that they are working in the community. So those are just some things. But I wanted to share some examples of how you can break down the exact same thing with two different audiences. And you can do this with more depending on how you segment it. But I believe this is my last slide. So I'm going to hand things over to you, Chris, to show how this all gets implemented into the email campaign.
Thank you, Lindsay. So if you want to advance 2 slides, please. I'm going to be covering basically a free tool in which to create a more dynamic email. And so the first thing is if you want to go back and look at Canva from our season 1, but one of the great things is at the time, this was not available, but it is now. Canva has gone ahead and integrated a email design that can be used through Gmail, MailChimp, as a design that you can create, design, put together, and then export into those 2 different platforms. Or you can use it as a link. But there's various different ways for people to access them. But it's just one way to change your email into a much more dynamic design. And so I'm going to share my screen really quick. And I'm going to show you what I, prepped some things for today. And so this is Canva, the free edition. And so right here, I have 4 different designs that I have. The first one is when you go ahead and you say up here that you want to create an email, you can click on this and it's going to upload and you can do one of 3 different things. You can go ahead and create your own email design. You can go to a template that's over here on the left-hand side. Anything that doesn't have a little crown on it can be used and modified without paying for any of it. So, and then there's also this new feature that they've created with AI that you can say what type of email you would like to have for the communication that you're focused on. So we have basically, you can either choose a template, you can have AI help in creating a design for a template, or you can create from your own. So I'm going to go back to my home screen and I picked out one. This was a email design here, or sorry, this is not the one I wanted to show you. I wanted to show you this one. This is an email design that was done for foundation. And I thought, oh, okay, this could be very useful for you all to see like, okay, what are the common things that are in here? So, we have our organization, we have a header shot, and then we have information, we have different buttons, our call to action, information, different suggestions of ways to engage the reader. And then we have, more information to help engage that reader. And then again, several different ways for someone to go ahead and click and engage with the communication that we have. All of which, this is all customizable. So I did this. I used that previous one that I just showed you, and I decided to update it. And there's certain things that we want to kind of highlight with you really quick. So I did this. I sent this to my colleagues and I said, "Oh, look at what I did." And they were able to give me some really great feedback. And I decided to wait on that feedback to share it with you all today. Some of the things that you want to make sure that you do is be consistent. So in my headers here, see how there's header 1, header 2? You need to be consistent with your font sizes so that you are creating a hierarchy of information within your email, okay? So I used one header size here. I used a different header size here. I need to create that hierarchy. I should have used maybe a larger amount here and a smaller amount here. And then also when I'm using paragraph text, my paragraph text should also be consistent in the same size. I like to use icons that can be easily seen, but when you have a brand, you need to make sure that you're following your brand's identity. And at the university, we like to use narrative photos that tell a story. And so I should change these to be narrative photos that tell a story. Um, so I'm just giving you like a critique on my own experience. And so this is like I came through and I put together just an example. I added, of course, logos at the top and bottom, but you will notice one of the things that I didn't, there's no personalization here. This is a limitation that Canva has, is that there's no personalization. So when you use this, you can add, like here, when you start your paragraph, you can add a hi and a space and make sure that you use a font that your Gmail has if you want to send these out one by one. Otherwise, you will have to build this in when you export it over to MailChimp, where you can add that personalization for the first name of the person. So this is an example of customizing a template. Next, this is an AI design that I asked. I specifically said, could you please give me a nonprofit email template? And so it was able to give me a blank template with things to go ahead and populate. Great. So it gave me a nice, simple, and basically it's all you change it to make sure that it fits your message. An untitled design, this is so like building from scratch. This, I would say, is a little daunting, sorry, because it is a blank slate and you have to know what goes in here. You can use maybe a template to get ideas, but the first thing you want to do is look here for the quick actions. So once you click on this, you see the little plus sign, and you're going to start to see all the different items that we can go ahead as far as the customization for this template. Now, the other things that I had, so I'm going to stop sharing screen for a second because I'm going to go back to our deck. And so I talked about headers, paragraphs, design blocks, columns. Okay. And so I'm going to reshare my screen here because I wanted to show you how this is all used with Gmail or how it connects. So let me reshare. Thank you. And let me show you here and where you find it. So this is the email that I customized. So over here under the share, you click on this and you can send a test email. And when you do that, it is going to send an email to the email that you have registered to your Canva account. You can download it. I'm not, I don't use this one, to be frank. Gmail is sufficient. If I click on this, it asks me what Gmail account I want to connect with this Canva account, and then it will open your Gmail account and allow you to see this as a draft inside of your Gmail account. And then we have also MailChimp. If you have a free MailChimp account, that's a possibility as well. You can go through, and if you have a list of contacts, you can go ahead and send it through there. And there's also a public view link, which is it helps you do your tracking. So here, I want to show you really quick, like if this email is live, I can click on this analytics and I can see my click visits, what Deborah and was mentioning earlier, like any of the links that I had, which one of the links did they interact with? Did they go to the website and things like that? So this is interesting for you to understand and know how people are engaging with the communications that you're providing. All right. We're a little over on our time, but we have 5 minutes now for Q&A. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we can move on to the question portion of this. If you guys had any questions or anything.
And feel free to add your question via the Q&A button below, but we also feel free to add them to the chat because we're able to monitor both. And if you have a burning question that occurs as the moment that the program ends, you can also email any one of the three of us and we'll be happy to respond. And maybe we just did such a great job that there couldn't possibly be a question after the thoroughness of our of our roundtable.
Well, I think we have like a very different, like realistically, we have three different audiences here that are represented. Deborah at the large university, Lindsay here who has a regional. Could we please see the slide with choices of email content again? And then I have a very niche with the alumni. And so it's interesting because even though I have a much smaller niche, some of these tools are very helpful because you want to see how people are engaging with with what you're sending to them. Because I myself find that if I send an email to just one person individually instead of a BCC email, I have a much higher likelihood of getting a response. If I send something BCC, it's more than likely not going to have a high response rate. So individual and customized emails are much more effective when it comes to my personal experience in email communication, particularly with the alumni, because it's a one-on-one personal relationship that we're maintaining.
Have I hit on the slides that were relevant? Yes. Okay, great. And Lori, you've asked like some of the initial challenges that we have faced. So I would say that some of the challenges that we face is engagement. One of the things that we noticed, even recently, some of it was a cadence thing. When I started in my position 2.5 years, 3 years ago, and there hadn't been regular communications for quite a while, because there had been some turnover in the position. So we started with a weekly email, a weekly newsletter. And I think that created it was a lot of work to do. I think it was effective in that it kind of we started posting on social media very regularly. We started doing very regular direct email communications, and I think that helped establish us as top of mind, and a lot of people were able to realize that we were kind of making different uh, inroads into wanting to stay connected. Um, but we found that the engagement rate didn't support weekly newsletters, and so we switched to try to do monthly newsletters. Um, and then we realized that there's two different ways we want to communicate regularly, and that is we wanted people to know what kind of events, such as the Amplify series or Out of the Woods webinar that happens monthly, or some of the other unique events. Like we're going to have an author's talk with one of our alumni later this month. That's a unique event. So we decided that I still wanted to have a monthly touch point with everyone, and I made that an events and calendar email so that on the first of the month people can see the things that are happening in our community engagement. Now, someone who doesn't live in Appalachia may not be able to physically have access to, say, the Mountain State Maple Days, but hopefully anyone with an internet connection can sign up for some of these virtual programs as well. And then we're moving to quarterly newsletters. One of the recent challenges is that our quarterly newsletter is pretty long, and we wanted to have some exclusive content to make it valuable. But we're finding that it gets cut off, like the email itself gets cut off in your inbox because of the length of the email. And it's very unlikely that people will actually click to see the whole email in their browser window. So that is a challenge too. So some of it is, kind of working on brevity. And what I'm going to do next week is our spring newsletter. So I'm going to experiment a little bit with having a little bit more of a robust index at the top of the newsletter. So what's called above the fold. I'm going to share my screen and show you one of the slides that that was embedded that we didn't quite get a chance to talk about. These are some of the top email campaign providers, like softwares. So the university uses MailChimp. I have also used Constant Contact. Those are kind of the two gold standards. HubSpot is also quite popular. But these are the essential kind of elements for an email. And so when we call above the fold, that is this section. So when you open your email, whatever you see, first thing on your page, the top of the email without scrolling down, that's called above the fold. That same language is used for a web page. So when you click on a web page and it opens in your computer, on your tablet, or on your phone, whatever you first see, that's above the fold. And that is the only thing they can sort of guarantee that people will see. So what I'm going to try to do for the spring newsletter is above the fold have like a more informative index section. So it's like in the News from North Mountain section, here are the 3 articles included in this newsletter. In the alumni section, we're going to be talking about Bethany's book talk, so that you don't have to scroll down and wonder what the content is, that our audience members may be able to select, say, oh, I actually am interested in going to Mountain State Maple Day. I want to go to the Highland Maple Festival, which is happening later this month. And so they can click on that and then go directly to the content that's most relevant to them. So it's still an experiment. It will always be a challenge because we want to reach people. We want our content. There's some things that we have to send out. And there's other things we want to make sure people want to hear about. So it's that balance.
Yeah. And whenever I started 5, almost 6 years ago now, for Appalachia, we had no presence anywhere for anything. And so that was a huge challenge, was establishing our identity everywhere, but then also learning who our audience was once we established that identity. And so that has been interesting, learning that we have different audiences that show up on different platforms. And so that's something to consider, that your audience might be different on different platforms. And that has been something that I have enjoyed working with Chris and Deborah on, is creating that content more intentionally for those audiences, because once you really do figure out who is showing up where, the engine really starts to work.
I think what's really interesting is, and I know that we're over time, but for those of you that are in the masters or have been, with us for a while, this really touches in, like this part of communications touches into our definition of community and where how people identify and have the ability in which to act. So that is a very direct and relatable link in communications in particular, because you have to look for where the crossovers are of what do people have in common that they identify together as a community and would want to act on it. And so that's how we use that kind of in a guiding way to look at our communications in particular.
Yeah, well, and Lori has some interesting comments in the chat too. And yes, the use of so above the fold is actually a newspaper term, because that would be like when you get the newspaper, it's folded. So whatever you see on the front page is what you are guaranteed to at least see, if not read. And then that's another reason why comics are above below the fold, because that is such a popular piece of the newspaper that people would unfold the paper in order to read it, and then they would see other content too. So there's a lot of digital technology that takes from, like, for example, Photoshop, which is a design tool, or Canva as well, is based on these. It uses terms from like darkroom photography. But yeah, I think, Chris, it's an excellent point of bringing seed scale into this conversation. One of the things that email campaigns do have the opportunity to do, even though, again, as Lori's pointing out, audience engagement shifts and changes, but this is something that can easily scale without a lot of more uh, without an appreciably larger cost in both human energy or resource cost, because it takes as much time to send a single well-designed email to one person as 100 people as 1,000 people, right? So so sometimes it's not a one size fits all, but hopefully what today's presentation shows is that there are ways to be strategic and to be considerate as you design your communication strategy, and using emails as what I would consider to be a vital part of that strategy, because it is still overall a very, very effective way to connect directly with the people in your audience. And so with that, I'm just going to share our final screen to, again, thank you, Chris, Lindsay, thank you so much for the time you took to prepare for this presentation. What you shared was I think, fabulously helpful. We're going to be back next week with the first of our hands-on learning sessions. So some of the feedback we got from the first season was that we wanted to create a mix of both informative sessions, such as today, but also practical applied sessions. We're an applied master's degree, and so it makes sense that our programming can also be more applied. And so in the first season, Chris gave us a masterclass overview of using Google Sites and how to create, which is it's a free website platform that you can access using your Future Generations email or any free email that you have through Gmail. And so next week, Chris is going to guide us through a hands-on practical demonstration. So we will share today's presentation, the recording and the slide deck with you in the coming few days. We will also share links to last season's Google Sites. There was kind of a pre-work video that Chris created, and then we'll send you the presentation. And next week, we hope that you'll join us and we'll work side by side as you build out your own Google site. And so I'm very excited for that. So you should be getting a survey after this. So we appreciate your feedback. Your feedback does really help us design and create content that is as relevant as possible. And I hope you have a wonderful week, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you so much. Take care, everybody.